Hey guys, this is Kirob speaking, and today we are going to take a look at the art test challenge that was announced in the last little dev update just a few days ago, and what this is all about, plus, of course, how to get started, even for you non-professional racetrack doodlers. So what we're going to do is go into Photoshop and just mash up some textures and talk about some possibilities. Ready for that? Alright, let's get started. First, let's have a real quick look at the art test manual, so to say. And there's a general skills description of what we are looking for in someone who is going to take that job. And then a description of what we expect from you. And it is exactly this little area that is in the box, in the red box, that we want to have fleshed out. That is corresponding to an original track size of automation, 1280 x 720. So not that many pixels, but they need to be beautiful. Of course, very important for this. If you want to follow along this mini tutorial in Photoshop, you are recommended to download these art assets that we have prepared for you. You find them in the document. Also, this one is linked down below in the description of this video. And in general, what we expect from you in this regard. Working to scale is very important, and keeping the track spline the way it is also extremely important. Preferably, you actually work in the documents that we provide to you, the PSD file and the AI file, because that has the exact placement of the track spline that we are expecting from you. As this video likely will be used as a little bit of a starting guide for how to start to work on tracks and create them at a, let's say, at least semi-professional level, I want to go through a few little techniques that might help you along the way. So now let's jump into Photoshop. Alright, so here we are, Photoshop open, and downloaded the resources that we have provided to you. There are some pretty good textures in here. The different asphalt textures are for different road roughnesses, and there's a dark variant and a light variant. And I'm going to choose the light variant here for what I'm going to show you. But of course there will be some maybe patches, road patches that need to be done. So for that you would be needing some of the darker asphalt as well. Let's just show you how to do this. You just drop it in there, and then this is a separate image loaded in. You just Control-A, Control-C, and then copy it over to your other textures. So now we have it in here, and we can call it something appropriate. You see that I've already done so for basically all of them that are required. And that is quite important because we are using this texture stack in order to create the tracks. But before we go into more detail in that, let's first take care of the elephant in the room, and that is that, well, there is no track. Well, I have that prepared as well, of course. So here we have the AI file that is provided to you, and that file contains the track splines. So you deactivate all the other layers and then just have these layers on there that you have created of your racetrack, or in this case our racetrack. And what you do is just export this one, and that is done here, export as, and you export it as a PNG. Okay, so I have prepared that now. It is exported. The Nanilla track lines are sitting right here, and now that it is a PNG file, I can simply drag it into Photoshop as well. And I'm going to do that right here. Doesn't matter. Of course, very important. 100%. You don't want to mess up the scale. And well, when you are exporting something like this, you would usually want to export the whole thing, like so that you know exactly that it fits perfectly into where it needs to be. I'm just going to place it down right there, and it's of course not visible because it's not the top layer at the moment, so let's just drag it there. And what I'm going to do is select a part of the track I want to use as a showcase, I think this is quite appropriate. So now this is exactly 1-to-1 scale, because we have imported it at 100%. The spline was made at 100% scale. Everything needs to be perfectly in scale for when you are doing work like this. First, I want to share with you the general concept that we are going to use to create a nicely textured surroundings. And that is that we have our texture stack here at the side, and we are going to use masking in order to bring different ones of these textures on top of each other. So basically everything will have a black mask until we paint it in. Let's choose grass as our base layer, and then if we want to paint dirt on top of it, then it would have to be the next one. And then we might want to be able to paint sand on top of it as well. So let's put it there. And then the asphalts are probably coming, this concrete can be a background thing. The dark asphalt definitely needs to be a front thing. And the smooth asphalt at the bottom, then rough, then broken, then patched. Okay, I think that's a somewhat reasonable ordering. So first, how do we create the masks for all of these? Well, it's very simple. There's this little button down here that is adding a mask to the layer. So we're going to use that. And next up, we just use the fill tool and make them to go dark. So select the mask here. Otherwise you paint over the actual texture. You don't want that. And we are making it... Oh, that is not quite what we want. 100% opacity, quite important. So yes, put it in there. Just make all of them black for now, apart from the grass. So now, you see that we have the grass and the nonlinear track lines sitting right there. And now just to show you the concept of it, let's say we do want to make a little sand trap here, gravel pit. And thus, we just take the normal brush and we go to the mask, select white, and make this one a little less hard maybe. Something like maybe 80% works, and slightly larger. And now, what you can do is just paint in a gravel pit. Isn't that beautiful? So we go like this, and then we can just fill it out by painting that in. And we're not painting it on the actual textures, we are painting on the mask instead. So let's say you want to have a little bit of dirt around it. Or even inside of it. If you need to have it inside of it, of course you need to change the layer order to be on top of the sand. So let's try that out, and let's change the opacity down to like 10%. And we are going to paint on some dirty bits here. We probably need a little bit more opacity to make this effect a little stronger. But you see here that we are now painting in a little bit of dirtiness there. Someone has taken a dump at the... Oh my god, this is awful. Yes, exactly as it should be. So very simply, you can add some darker spots or whatnot here and just really make some nice texture work with very, very simplistic techniques without even touching the actual textures. Of course, you can modify the textures as well, and you would be doing that by, let's say just go to here, the grass, so you don't quite like the grass. So you select the grass, go to the adjustment layers, and then just do whatever you want. Like, do we today want to have, maybe bluegrass? No, but of course there's a more reasonable way of doing this. So, for instance, we could go for a warmer look in general by just sliding this down slightly and then potentially increasing the saturation and lightness a little bit, like this, and maybe go even more yellow. Yeah, you see that? Now if we go before and after, see, it has a much warmer touch to it. But one thing to take into account here is that if we were to have it somewhere else, you see how that changes the other layers as well. You want to avoid that. You want to be very particular with what you do. Once you're done, you can apply effects to the whole thing that you've made. But before then, you want to make sure to only apply this to the layer below. There's this little button here. That is exactly what it does. So you see the little arrow pointing there now? But now let's take another look at the track spline here. So we have that one going there. And we want to use this one. Let's first make a copy by just cloning the layer. It's all the way up here, duplicate layer, and we copy this one. And now we can turn off the other one. And what we're going to do now is try to make this perfectly white. So we can just use the curves, because that is basically go like this. And of course we only want to apply it to that, and ta-da! You see, we do have now a perfectly white spline. And that one, of course, can be used in a mask. So I'm going to copy that one over. Can just do Control A and Control C, of course. Oh, but you need to be on the correct thing, unlike me. So now we have that one copied. And let's say we want to make it smooth asphalt. So what we're going to do is, that's a little trick. You need to hold Alt and then click the mask of that texture. And then you can paste straight into that mask, like this. But now it doesn't have its adjustments anymore. So what we need to do first is to actually merge these, or flatten them. You do that by just choosing the merge layers while having the appropriate ones selected. Let's call it something appropriate, spline mask, and you see it is right there. So now we can again go ahead and copy this, and now do it properly. So we go here and click, hold Alt and click on the asphalt there, or the mask of this one there. And now we're just going to position it so that is correct, and that will be there. Deselect it, and now what we can do is to go back to the normal view. Turn this one off, and ta-da! We have the asphalt. So how would you now do in order to paint in some, let's say, less optimal tarmac conditions? Well, very simple, right? You go to the rougher asphalt, you select the mask, and then you just start painting on top of it. Just make sure color white is selected, and maybe the opacity is set to something that makes sense. And you see here, we do get a bit of a rougher texture. But this is looking a little weird, because it is not the right scale, is it? And in general, this one does look to have the wrong scale. So what you can do is resize the textures, add some noise to them, and so on. Let's try that out. Adding noise in general, if done properly and carefully, is a really good tool to hint at details that weren't really there. So what you can do is you select your texture that you want to add noise to, and the one that I would be suggesting you use is the add noise function, and then you choose monochromatic Gaussian noise, and you see here the effect that we're looking for. And this is at 1%, which tends to be already quite a lot. Like to the grass texture, I probably would be applying that much, but to the road surface, maybe not so much. So maybe 0.6, like 0.5 is the minimum you really can apply, and then it rounds up to 1 from there. So 0.5 is a safe bet to just add a tiny amount of texture to it, and maybe you want to do so twice, because it's such a tiny amount. But yeah, so now we have a little bit extra detail in it, but the general shape of these seems to be a bit weird, right? It's very large scale where it needs to be smaller. So what you can do is make your own texture from this, and that will be very simple. You just take the texture that is supplied to you, and like this one here, and then just canvas size and extend it out. And then you take the seams, if there are any, if it doesn't tile, and you fill the seams by just, what is it, Shift F5. So let's double the size of this one, 4096, put this one in the corner, And we have just that one beautifully. Ah, yeah, it's almost tiling. So I can show you exactly what I mean by, well, no, it's not tiling at all. Well, that's even better because then I can show you how that's done. And there we have it. Okay, and now you can select the general area of it. So Shift F5 it is, Content Aware Fill, and let's try that out and see what it does. And it did stupid things because we were selected on something that wasn't merged, so it doesn't know what to pull from. So we merged the layers first, and now try that again. Content Aware Fill, and there you go. So now you have a somewhat larger texture. You can still see some of the artifacts here. But now what you can do, because it was the wrong size, it would still be the wrong size now. But now you can just shrink this one down. Control-Alt-I is the shortcut, and we shrink it down to half size. 4 times the texture in the same size as before. So 2048 was the size. And we can do a sharper reduction. That sounds good. And there we have it. At that point you can also do another add noise if that is helping and gets you some additional nice detail. So now it's looking like this. It does look like it's a more appropriate scale in general. But yes, texture work, very important. And I'm just a newbie to it, but as you see, you can do a lot with very little. So now we could just take this one over again and go right here. Where do we have that one? This was the dark one, so let's pop it in here and add a new mask, make that one black, and then try it out to see if the texture is looking any better. And we can try it out by just drawing in a little repair patch. Now let's go for a very small brush size, 100% opacity, and start painting that in. So this one is black currently, we need to set it to white, and very small brush size to make it sharp. So carefully painting that in. We do want to have a nice little road patch, something like this. And yes, I'm just doing this with the mouse, so I'm a little slow here. With pen and tablet that would be a lot faster, but like this we just can paint that in, and then when we zoom out, this will now of course automatically already have the texture on it, so you don't have to create it afterwards. Alright, there. Now we have a beautifully detailed little road patch. I think you see the general gist of creating the textures for the track here. And of course there is a lot more to making this track than just the texture work. And I don't think I'm entirely qualified to talk about any of the actual asset creation and detailing, because that's not what I've learned. Yeah, good luck, you're on your own there. But what I can show you is just quickly how I do rubber on the road, which is really good to have on there for immersion and making it feel lived in. So what I'm going to do is just create a new layer and call it the rubber layer. I go for a quite dark tone and something like opacity 10% might be good, and then we do need a size that is reasonable. 10 pixels at a 4 pixels per meter scale means that we have 2.5 meters. So that is a very, very wide car, basically. Larger than a normal race car. And you could use that or go a little larger to apply some general rubber to the road. Like do it in 20, which is about twice the road size. If you go larger brush, try to use lower opacity. That is higher opacity, not lower opacity, like this, 5%. And now let's just see what happens. So we can start painting on here. And you see that that is not the ideal line. You see that it quickly builds up the rubber there. We could later on mask that one also by the spline so that it only applies to the spline. But you see how rapidly that one can build up. And if you are This one isn't looking particularly good, I have to admit. But you see how quickly you can build up that stuff. And there is an unlimited amount of fine-tuning you can do. Also, changing down in size is actually better to use, like 9 pixels or something, if that is an appropriate size for a race car. You get a much finer detailing there. And then you can also add skid marks. How wide is the tire? Is it 25 centimeters? Race car tires are probably closer to 50 centimeters wide than 25, and that would be done at a higher opacity. Let's try 30. And then you need a very steady mouse hand. That doesn't look good. But let's lower the opacity some more. And I need to be somewhat straight here. Like this one. This one could work. But you see, in general, you can create some, if done in taste. And you can almost see it here, that if you are at an appropriate scale, that actually looks pretty decent. Turn on and off the rubber. And with curbs and everything, that would come to life as well. Then, of course, if you decide you've used too much rubber, you can always lower the opacity. But yeah, there's some of the tricks that you can use to make the track come to life. With masking and just some general, very basic texture work. There's no rocket science to this. There's a little bit of creativity and some diligence in making the layering of the textures properly. And of course, laying rubber and detailing is another story also. So now, if you're participating in the art test, then I would suggest that you, and you know that already from reading the fucking manual, you have one round of feedback from me in this one. So when you are basically done, but haven't fully polished things up yet, you can get a round of feedback from my end, and I will tell you what's good and what should be improved or could be improved. And we'll point those things out to you, and you can come back with a finished version after that. For that, you can email me directly at robert@camshaftsoftware.com. And of course, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can come up with. Certainly better than I have. And of course, you needed to do this on the track part that actually is part of the art test. Not some random ass part of the track that doesn't matter for now. I hope this general approach, showing you this texture stack and masking, is helping you make beautiful tracks yourself. Because after all, with the track editor, this is mostly going to be excellent to use for modders. So we are looking forward to all the amazing tracks that can be made that way, and in more fancy ways than I've just shown you. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed and this was useful, and I shall see you guys next time.